Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Price, and I'd like to welcome you to today's presentation, which is titled Special Needs and Creativity, Improvisation as a Blueprint for Learning. Now, if you're like me, you are privileged to spend your day working with a population of students who can do brilliant and wonderful things in their musicianship, their piano playing, their artistry, and in their creative music making, if they are included in an adaptive pedagogy that can help them realize their goals and open up and express their musical ideas to other people. So that's the whole blueprint behind today's presentation. And what I'd like to do first is just share with you some ideas that will frame our discussion, then talk about some techniques in adaptive pedagogy for teaching improvisation to students who are special learners. And then I'll give you a short demonstration at the piano of some of these techniques. Then we'll look at some videos of a student who's finding his way through this process. Then we'll have a short concert of students who are improvising on the spot. And then we will look at some resources. So first off, you probably all are been familiar with this first little caption up at the top, first and then. And that's very important in our teaching because we tell a student what's going to happen first, and then we will go on to the next step and the next step and the next step and the next step. And that's one thing that I want to remember throughout this process. So firstly, inclusion. We want to always make sure that our students are part of and not less than anyone else or any skill or any ability in piano playing. We want to make sure that they have access to everything. And most of my students have autism to one degree or another. And accompanying that autism are often a lot of other developmental delays, whether that would be blindness, intellectual disabilities, speech delays, other cognitive or auditory processing issues. And then many of our students also exhibit fine motor skill delays as well. So we need to give them a little bit more time in the process, and we need to break it down into more steps for them. For many of our students also, abstract concepts, things like metaphors and analogies don't work really well. So we want to make sure that we say what we mean and mean what we say in very literal, specific, and step-by-step terms. Also, layering can be a minefield of problems for a student. And if we take numbers as an example, they are thinking about page numbers in their books. They may be thinking about numbers in terms of time. They may be thinking about numbers in terms of money. And then we start telling them to think about numbers in terms of finger labels, and then uh, counting and counting musical beats, and then measure numbers. So it's a wonder of all of that layer cake of different uses of numbers. Is it any wonder that they get confused and that they shut down or it becomes a trigger for undesirable behaviors? So we want to avoid anything that's going to create multi-layered thinking processes for our students. And also, we want to make sure that everything that we are doing for a traditional student is sort of recast and reframed for a student who might not be able to work well with some of those traditional pedagogies, or who may find them meaningless, irrelevant, and counterproductive. And then lastly here, what I'm going to be talking most about today is musical acculturation and aural understanding. And by musical acculturation, what I mean is placing our students into a sound environment where they are constantly hearing a variety of melodic patterns, harmonic progressions, meters, and rhythms, all in different combinations. And then after a period of time, they begin to work with those and equate them to black and white key patterns on the keyboard, how to shape their hands to those patterns, and then press keys to execute their ideas and sound. And once they have a vocabulary or an aural vocabulary of all of these patterns, whether they be melodic, harmonic, rhythmic, then they begin to develop an aural understanding of how all of those puzzle pieces fit together. Just because a student can't verbally label those things or intellectually explain them to you doesn't mean that they orally don't understand them and how they fit together. So my job is to help them develop a repertoire or a library of those patterns, then show them how to fit their hand and fingers to the black and white keys on the piano so they can recreate those patterns or create new patterns in sound. And then that opens the doorway to their ability to improvise. So let's talk a little bit about some teaching strategies that I've found to be very, very helpful and actually crucial for working with my students. So number one, I need to create a safe space for them. And that means giving them a chance to decompress, keeping a sense of sameness in my studio, and just allowing them time to explore and time to open up and calm down and get centered for the learning process. And sometimes that involves me teaching them the behaviors that they will need to get ready to learn as well. Now, a lot of that safe space involves me and my teacher persona. And so that means I always want to use calm body language with my student. And I always want to keep what I like to call the perpetual smile, which is a smile with my mouth and with my eyes and with my eyebrows, and always a positive, calm tone of voice. And we have a rule, or several rules in my studio, which is no negative self-talk. So if my student tries something and maybe they do it incorrectly or not in the most desirable way, I never point that out. I just say, you know what, you tried and you get the award for being the best trier today. Do you think we can try it again? And can we do it this way? And so everything is always a chance for interpersonal communication, for validation, and for moving forward and making everything a teaching moment. Or in my case, a learning moment, because as we all know, our students are the best teachers. And so I need to put my student hat back on and start learning from my students because they always teach me what they need in the best way that they need it. And then I also alluded to validation. In my studio, we do lots of celebrating every single try, every single success, even if it's one key being played the way we need to do it, we always have a party and a celebration and success because that student achieved something that may have been very difficult for them. Routine and structure is also very, very important. So I need to make sure that my students know when the improvisation activity is going to come during the lesson. And then I need to have a breakdown in my teaching routine so that they know step by step what is going to happen. And then I follow that step by step breakdown so that I'm not layering things or throwing too much at them all at once or assuming that they can digest the material, generalize it, and transfer it to another situation. I've always found that it's important also to give joint attention or to achieve joint attention. Now, sometimes with our students with autism, they may not make eye contact or they may not look at you, but that doesn't mean that they aren't listening very, very intently. And if I do need them to watch a model, sometimes I need to ask 4 or 5 times. Because sometimes our students may have neuropathy issues or problems with fine motor skills, which could involve moving their eyes. So sometimes they may need a little bit of extra time just to move their body and get their eyes centered and to be able to attend to a model. And then sometimes in our teaching, we aren't really exact in what we want them to watch. We'll just say, look at me. And they look at my face. And then I wonder, why aren't you looking at my hands? It's because I didn't say, can you look at my hands while I play? So I need to make sure that that joint attention is specific and that I have achieved it. Otherwise, the student may be missing out on part of the instructional process that I wanted them to absorb. My students have also taught me that it's important to ask permission. I need to know that they're ready. And so I always ask, okay, next we are going to do A, B, or C. Are you ready? And then if my student says yes, they've invited me into their learning process. If they say no, I need to determine if they aren't ready or if they need more time. And I'll simply say, you're not ready. Do you need a little bit more time? Or I have to determine if it's an avoidance behavior. And if it's an avoidance behavior, I usually use what I call gentle insistence, again with the smile and the perpetual smile, saying, well, no, I think we're going to do this, right? Don't you think we're going to do this? Yes, let's get ready, let's do it. With my students, I always have to remember that in music, we use a vocabulary that may be different from any other vocabulary that they have learned or used. And we also use it in a context specific way. So every word that I want my student to know in the teaching process, I need to teach it. I need to teach the word, make sure they hear it, and then I need to teach the meaning and make sure they understand that meaning in context. Um, so an example is if we use quarter in terms of a quarter note, well, to them, a quarter may mean 25 cents. Or they may be working on telling time, so they might be confused between 25 cents, quarter of an hour, or quarter note, or quarter as in proportion. So we need to make sure that everything is taught, that it's understood, and that it's understood in context. Now, in teaching improvisation, I know it's one of those things that we're all scared of, and people panic. But really, when it comes down to improvising at the piano, it's just exploring sound. And really, all it comes down to three things. What are you going to play? When are you going to play it? And how are you going to play it? And then if we add a fourth thing to it, it's just do it. And I always make sure that in that safe space that my student knows whatever sound they made is awesome because you made a sound. And it's my job to help them shape those sounds. They never do anything wrong. I guess the only way to do anything wrong is just not do it. So we always make sure that they have to try. And then I like to build a lot of behaviors into the lesson. And that is my turn, your turn. Because they like to explore the keyboard, they may like to noodle around. So I need to make sure that they learn, you need to pay attention to me, and then you can have your turn next. And that is another first and then. Okay. So let's move on to a demonstration. And in just a second, I'm going to pause my recording. So the next time you see me, I'll be sitting at my piano. And so what we're going to do in this demonstration is break down the process of improvising on the black keys of the piano and into the steps of right hand, finger numbers, black keys, same and different, steady beat and counting, and then how to put together a duet to place our student in this sound culture, and then how to help them transfer that skill from one set of black keys to another, or maybe even the white keys. So I'll be with you in just a moment. All right, welcome back. So here we are again. We got the technology to work. That's always a win in my corner. So what I'd like to show you right now is just a little demonstration of the way I might teach some of these things to a student. And as I said, we're just going to go through the process of breaking down step by step how to teach a student to improvise using the black keys. And so, again, I have to teach the vocabulary, I have to teach the context, and I need to create that safe space. And then I need to make sure my student has joint attention, ask permission, and then we can go. So that's a lot to remember. But once you get used to this process, it sort of becomes second nature. So the first thing I'd want my student to do is I want to make sure that they know which hand is their right hand. And I can't assume that they know which hand is their right hand. So sometimes we have to teach that. And I know you know any number of ways that we can teach that to a student. And the word right is kind of a minefield in vocabulary because right means correct. Right is also a direction. Right in a different spelling can mean a religious rite. So it can have many different meanings. W-R-I-T-E, to write something down. So we have to make sure that our student understands that in the context. So I would say, okay, now it's time to improvise. Are you ready? Very good. Can we work on right hand? Show me your right hand. And then my student may lift it up, or however you want them to learn the right hand. I usually don't do it face to face like this. I usually do it side by side with them, because if I say, show me your right hand, or if I say, show me your right hand, and I'm facing them, which hand are they going to show me? They're probably going to show me their left hand. And so I've already confused them in the teaching process. So right hand, very good. Now, can you point? This is your finger number two. And I'm touching my finger number two. We all know that a student with autism may not like to be touched, but I can also go, that is your finger number two. Now, can you look at the piano? Take your eyes and look at the piano keyboard, very specific piano keyboard. Can you take your finger number two and can you touch one of the black keys? How about this one? Can you touch it? Can you push it down and make a sound? Excellent job. You just played a black key on the piano with your right hand, finger number two. Can you do another one? Can you do that again and again and again and again? Very, very good. Do you know how to do that now? That's excellent. So can you take your right hand, finger number two, can you play a different black key? And I learned a long time ago that if I keep saying another black key, my student is going to keep playing that same black key. And that's because I had a student once look at me and say, do you need a different one? And so that's make or break in teaching. Just one word, another, which can be the same, or different, which the student will understand to move and play a different black key. Can you play a different black key? Very good. Can you play a different black key? Very good. I always celebrate every single trial that they do. Okay, so we're also working with same and different here. And that's just another way of saying another isn't always the best choice of word, different. So we might want to start differentiating between, can you play the same black key or can you play a different black key? All right, so now that I know that my student can move around on the keyboard and play different black keys, I have to start getting some rhythm built in. And that is steady beat or counting. Now, I'm not going to deal with counting with them because that's too much in this layer cake, which can be a behavioral trigger, or it can just cause them to shut down or be confused or not want to do the activity anymore. And if they don't want to do that, it's a failure in my teaching. It's never the failure in the student. They're trying their hardest. So what I want to use are some words that will help them achieve a steady beat. Steady beat is a really hard concept because of the word steady and beat. Those words can have many different meanings, and they're even difficult for a traditional student. But what I do like to use are things called directive words, which are words that tell my student exactly what to do with their body while they are playing to have the appearance of a steady beat or the sound of a steady beat in their playing. So those directive words can be something as simple as play, 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 play. Now that's a really steady beat, but those words tell their fingers exactly what to do or tell them what to do with their fingers to make that sound happen. So can you find your right hand? Can you have your finger number two? Can you play a black key? Now watch my fingers while I play. Play, different, play, different, play, different, play, different, play, different, play, different, play, different. Do you think you can do that? And then maybe I need to coach them a little bit, or maybe I'll be pointing to keys above to help them manage. You will know best what kind of in the process teaching your student needs to help them manage the skill. Once they can do that, and of course I'm choosing a tempo which my student with fine motor skills can manage. I don't want to go too fast because they may just have trouble coordinating the motions. Then I may say, can I play some music with you? If they say, all right, I'll say, don't worry about it. There's nothing to be afraid of. I will help you the whole time I'll be there. So I'm going to play some music, but my music is going to sound different. I may be playing more black keys than you will, but that's okay. All you have to do is play different, play different, play different, play different, play. And I might play something like some kind of simple little pentatonic black key accompaniment. And then I might have to try and play both parts at the same time so my student can hear what it sounds like. And then I just coach them to do the same thing. So again, right hand, finger number two. black key. We're going to keep a steady beat by saying play, different, play, different, play, different, or play, move, whatever words work best for your student. And then I might try to play it both together so they hear what it's going to sound like. And that's something that I should probably practice, because otherwise you get something that's a little bit more complex or a little off the beat, or something that's not the best example for the student. So if I make a mistake like that, I'll often say, oh, you know what? Dr. Price made a mistake. I am sorry. I didn't want to do it that way. Can I do it again and show you the right way to do it? Or something like that. Now, as a student, I already started moving around on the keyboard and working with different patterns. Now, if my student starts to do that, it's communication. What they're telling me is they get the concept and they are ready to move on and start adding more into the process. If not, then perhaps we end up with something like this. Just something that's simple. Once they have learned that, we can start transferring that to the white keys. They have learned every single step. We're just now going to do it on the white keys. So that's an example of the step-by-step breakdown that I would use in the process with a student. Now, it might not go that fast in the lesson, or we might not get through all of those steps in one lesson. I don't care if it takes 6 weeks, though. I'm happy to do it for 6 weeks, and I will do it for 6 weeks. I am a firm believer in doing it for 50 weeks rather than doing it for 49 and giving up. So I always want my student to have success, and my job is not to be impatient or to be frustrated, because if I feel impatient or frustrated, then it's about me. And it's not about the student, and it's got to be about the student and their positive, validated experience. All right, so I'm going to pause the recording again, and then when we see each other again, I'll show you a young man who's working through this process and how he adds one thing on top of another, on top of another, and gets a little bit better at it every single time. All right, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for bearing with the technology changes. And now I'd just like to share with you a young man who is going through all of this process and learning to improvise using steps on the keyboard, learning how to put a fifth interval harmonization with it, and then getting cut loose to do whatever he wants at the keyboard with those tools. All right, so this young man is about 14 years old in this video. And what you're going to see is him just kind of learning how to step around on the keyboard, which requires a lot of coordination between the fingers and the sounds and which keys he needs to play. And you'll see from his facial expressions that he's not quite sure what's going on here.
Now you can go.
Okay, so there's not really a steady beat there. There's not any sense of phrasing. There's not a meter, a sense of meter, but that's not the point. The point is that he's learning how to step on the keyboard. And so we celebrate that, because that was just a big success story with this young man.
Now you can go.
All right, so in our next video here, he's going to be a little bit more successful. So he was starting to get more of a steady beat and also harmonizing that with just a tonic note in the left hand. And that's a real coordination challenge for a lot of students to be able to do those two things at the same time. So here he is doing some of the same thing. Let's see how much better he gets and how he uses his left hand to harmonize with the interval of the fifth. Okay, so how awesome was that? It's not, a true composition, but how about the fact that he kept a steady beat? He had some semblance of phrasing, he was harmonizing, and he was able to create a little A-B-A improvisation by moving from the C major five-finger pattern to the G major and then back. That's a real win in my book. Now, this is the same type of video, we just have a little bit of an improvement here. Okay, so he had some modal shifts in his left hand as harmonization, so it's getting even more interesting. And I hope you can tell just by his body language that his confidence level in what he's doing has improved so much from the first video that we saw. Now, this next little video is just a solo improvisation that he's doing using these skills. He's just a little bit further along in the process. Okay, so another winner in my book. You can see that he's working with really clear beat structures in the phrasing now, and he's got a sense of tonic and dominant in the way he's organizing his notes in the right hand. And then we'll have one more. And this young man, is mid to high functioning on the autism spectrum, but he does have some behavioral issues. And for kids with autism, improvisation is new. It's full of unknowns, so it can be a real behavioral trigger or an anxiety trigger for them. So that's why the step-by-step breakdown in the process is so important. So they always know in some degree what they're going to be doing. And if they have a rigid structure around them, then having that newness and that change can be very acceptable and very fun for them as well. Okay, so he's an awesome, awesome, awesome young man. I'm so proud of what he was able to do. And all the kids in my studio are required to learn to improvise. And when we were doing public recitals, after they play their repertoire, they're always required to improvise on the spot for the audience as well. And it's just a wonderful experience, and it's a chance for parents to see their child doing something that every other child can do. So it's just a win for the teachers, it's a win for the students, it's a win for the parents. And how wonderful to see young people creating music. I just don't think there's anything better. All right, let's view just a little concert now. These are students who all have autism. Many of them have associated conditions as well, such as blindness, profound developmental delays, fine motor skill delays, um, and lots of intellectual delays as well. But all of these, with the exception of one, are improvisations that were made up on the spot. And not all of them are ready for Carnegie Hall, but that's not the point. The point is they are part of and not less than, and they are able to express themselves in the medium of sound at the piano, and they're also able to share that experience with another person, which, let's face it, doesn't happen a lot in their lives. They're often forgotten, ignored, or people assume that they can't or that they can't be part of because they are assumed to be less than. And to repeat it again, I want my students to be part of and not less than. Here we go.
Are you ready?
Okay.
One, ready, go.
Yeah, not today. Yeah, now I am. Way to go.
Good job. One, that was beautiful, Craig. One, two, ready, go. Good, let's do it again. One. Let's do a new motive. A new motive. Listen, listen. Okay, my turn. Hands down. Hands down. This is your motive. It's your motive. Let's play your motive. Why don't you use this finger? Can you do it?
Okay. So is there anything more joyful than seeing a young person create their own music? And especially when it's a young person that society thinks isn't supposed to be able to do something like that, and seeing them break all the stereotypes and break all the molds. That's just joy in sound right there, and the best part of my day. Now, I know we've only been able to scratch the surface of this today, but what I'd like to do is share with you some resources that might be helpful. And the first is the Inclusive Piano Teaching blog, which is available on the Francis Clark Center for Keyboard Pedagogy website, which is at keyboardpedagogy.org. There are a lot of articles there that have to do with teaching students with all kinds of disabilities and special needs, and that is free of charge. Also, at the Piano Magazine website, which is claviercompanion.com, there are any number of webinars that I and my colleagues have done, and articles and other videos. And of course, you have to be a subscriber to access that content, but it is there in case you need it. And then also, I was very, very happy that the Francis Clark Center invited me to create the inclusive teaching course. And the URL is there on the screen for you. There is a nominal cost for this course, but it's a 16 unit course that has to do with as many subjects as possible in teaching students who are special learners, whether that is reading, counting, technique and artistry, choosing repertoire, all of those subjects. And then, of course, we have usually any number of sessions on teaching students who are special learners at the Music Teachers National Association conference, also at the National Conference on Keyboard Pedagogy. And if you work with the Royal Conservatory of Music in Canada, in their teacher portal, there are also some webinars and articles that we've done as well to help teachers. So thank you again for joining me for this workshop. I hope you've been inspired by these young people. I know I'm inspired every minute of every day by the work that they can do. And never let anyone tell you that a person with a special need or a disability can't do wonderful musical, artistic, and creative things at the keyboard, because I think we just proved them all wrong. So good luck to you as you keep on with your teaching, and thank you again for being the people that you are and for what you've done during this pandemic. You're real heroes for keeping your students' music study alive and for being a special person in their life. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy.